Good day, YouTube. MotoMaster X5 here. It's been a while since I've done a video again, but this time I'm going to do a little bit of a thought experiment. So today I want to talk about the future of the manual car, and I don't necessarily mean what I got here, a manual transmission. I mean like a a manually driven car, and if they have much of a future in the long term. And in all honesty, I don't know. I mean, it's just a thought experiment. It's my take on things. But let's say I'm going to talk about in the relatively distant future. I don't foresee self-driven cars, and by self-driven I mean you yourself. So I should say, okay, so I don't see cars that you actually have to drive yourself going anywhere in the next 5 to 10 years. After 10 years is where I could see them starting to be phased out, depending on the success of the self-driving cars. You know, let's say self-driving cars come out and there's some kind of like major fault with them, they're getting into accidents all the time, there's some lawsuit, that might push it back another 5 or 10 years. But the way I see it, unless barring something like that happening, which it wouldn't surprise me in all honesty. I'm going to go and mute that. It wouldn't surprise me, honestly, with the success they've not really been having with a lot of the automatic systems. For example, the automatic braking systems that will, you know, screw up and slam on the brakes if you drive too close to a guardrail. Stuff like that. I don't personally like to rely on stuff like that. I'm sure at some point they'll have it down. Right now they're not near that, but I could see in 10-15 years them finally, probably less than that, 10 or 15 years though, all that stuff should be all ironed out. Self-driving cars should be becoming pretty commonplace, you know. You'll probably know a few people that have them within 10 years, 15 at most. Now let's say in 20 years, let's say self-driving cars are proven to actually be safer and more efficient than, you know, driving around manually. Because let's face it, people are really bad at driving and merging, and this is going to be a good example right here. He could have easily went in front of that guy. Not that necessarily he should have, but... So that wasn't a great example. But the point is, self-driving cars could have timed that perfectly, so they wouldn't have had to slow down at all. They both could have just went in and, you know, timed around each other. Because I'm also going to make an assumption here that when they're self-driving cars, they're also going to be communicating with each other. So for example, my car would be telling this car, hey, I need to get over, I'm coming up, make some room. His car will slow down slightly, I'll be able to get over, no problem. So making that assumption, you can also assume that self-driving cars will be more efficient on the road when you have a ton of them, because they will, assuming there's no other people manually driving their cars around, traffic jams will be almost unheard of. Traffic will always be moving at a decent pace, barring heavy construction or heavy accident, or like a big accident or something like that. But generally speaking, I could see, like in big cities especially, self-driving cars being the thing you want. So let's face it, now the way things are in a big city, you do not want to be driving anyway. You're not really even usually going anywhere in heavy traffic. It's usually like a honking match for some reason. And I think actually in Europe they're already kind of talking about, well, no, that's different, sorry. Completely disregard what I was just about to say. I think they're banning motorcycles in some city in Europe. But I could see when self-driving cars become a big thing, them being pretty much the only cars you'll get in big cities, and potentially even regular cars like this will be outlawed because just safety concerns and efficiency. Now on the flip side, you do have to wonder if they could really truly outlaw manually driven cars due to a couple things. One, public outcry, which given another couple generations, you know, less people are learning to drive as it is now. Maybe another couple of generations, no one will care about driving. But right now, if you try to outlaw cars, there'd be a huge outcry. A lot of people like driving. So public outcry would kind of prevent that. I'm sure there'll always be places you can manually drive cars. And two, you're not always going to be driving out of well-known roads that a self-driving car could easily navigate. What if you have to go down some logging road, or what if your profession is a logger, or, I don't know, you want to go camping and you want to drive your car into some roads that aren't mapped. Now, maybe in the future we'll have AIs that are smart enough to go off-roading intelligently, as I pass this guy on the right, go off-roading intelligently and not crash, but I can't foresee that happening anytime in the near future. So if you want to go camping or something, you're going to need a car you can drive yourself to get there if you're going off the beaten trail. So that I could see as being a huge holdup for manually driven cars being outlawed or banned in more rural areas. I mean, I could see, like I said, in big cities them being banned, but in countries, no, I don't foresee them being banned anytime in the near future. Now, in the long run, maybe. But even if, let's say, they were banned completely on the road, I think you would still find tracks where people would race them. There would be like tracks or closed courses you could go to if you wanted to drive manually. Now, that would be a worst case scenario. In my opinion, I'm sure a lot of people would love it. But that'd be a worst case scenario, in my opinion. I think there will always be some way you can drive a car if you really want to. But again, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that maybe in the future cars will be pretty much delegated to track use only? It'll be like a sport, you know, no one really drives. It's kind of like horseback riding, say from, maybe I shouldn't say that because I don't know a lot about this, but like horse racing and horseback riding, it's just a hobby now for the most part. Like your average person doesn't ride a horse to get to their job or anything. It's just inefficient compared to a car, and maybe it'll be like that in the future where a manually driven car is just inefficient compared to a self-driving one that can get you to a place a lot faster. And that's not even getting into shared ownership self-driving cars, which in my opinion, I see this becoming a big thing. So imagine you don't even, slow down. Imagine you don't even necessarily own your car. Now I know a lot of people aren't going to like that, but just hear me out now. Ideally it makes sense. I'm not saying I necessarily like it either, but ideally this makes sense. Nobody really owns a car. You own a share of a car, or you buy like a subscription service to say, okay, I get a car to drive, or not to drive, to ride in when I need it. And you'll have fleets of self-driving cars all going around to where they think people are going to need rides, and constantly driving people around. And you think about it, right now your car 99% of the time, maybe a little less, maybe like 90-95% of the time, is just sitting there waiting for you to drive it. It's a huge waste of space. It's a huge waste of the material of the car. It just sits there. So you think about it, if cars that didn't really need to be parked very often, other than like in very low use scenarios, when like, let's say it's middle of the night, there's not many people driving, then obviously a lot of the self-driving cars are probably going to go into a standby mode. But during the day, you're not going to need parking spaces at your job, for example. You won't need a parking lot at grocery stores, because nobody's going to, you know, have a car to park there. They're going to get a ride in their self-driving car through the subscription service. And then when they're done, or when they get there, the car's just going to pull away, it'll pick up the next person, and then when they walk out, the car will be there again. Shit, I need to get over there. And then you just, like, I don't know, hit a button on your smartphone or whatever the fuck we have in 20 years, which probably won't be smartphones. It'll probably be some kind of integrated device, which that's a whole other can of worms that I'm not ready to talk about, or do I really want to think about it? In all honesty, I think people are already too glued to their smartphones as it is. I wouldn't want to see a world where shit's integrated into our physiology. Maybe I'm just old school. Don't like all this newfangled technology. Getting old, you know, 27 going on 28. But anyway, you know, you hit a button, or you think about the fact you're going to need a car in a few minutes, and if the infrastructure is planned out well, I could see it where you wouldn't be waiting for a car for more than a few minutes. Worst case scenario. if, you know, there'll probably be really good AI at that point that'll be able to plan out where the car should go and predict who's going to need a car. Which again gets into a whole nother thing where, do you really want something tracking your whereabouts that much? Personally, I don't. Like I said, this isn't necessarily what I want. This is just how I kind of see things going and the way the world's going right now. Do I agree with it? No, not necessarily. But what I agree with isn't necessarily what's going to be the most efficient or what the world's going to end up doing. So, like I said, in the future, I could very well see that most of the cars on the road might be self-driving and you might not even own your own car. It might just be a subscription service. Say you can ride in cars. And then a lot of people might not even have a license anymore. You know, if self-driving cars get good enough to where you don't need to watch them. Or maybe you do, but you just have a stop button you hit if you think it's doing something dangerous and it just stops and pulls over. Make sure this bitch is going. Yep, good. So again, I'm not saying I necessarily agree with this or want this to happen. I'm just saying how I see things happening in the next 20 plus years, where cars will just be mostly self-driving, except for in the cases of very rural areas or, you know, for recreation. And people may not even own cars. Well, the not owning cars thing I think might be further than 20 years down the line. Maybe you'll start to see a hint of that happening. But I think when we get to the point that I'm thinking where it's very streamlined and efficient, that might be more like 30, 40 plus years. But granted, technology moves fast. So maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe all this will happen in 10 years. No idea. So, I mean, let me know what you guys think. If you think this is an interesting topic. If you guys think that the world that I'm envisioning could work. Any reasons why it wouldn't work. If you think it's a good idea. If you think it's a shitty idea. If you like it. If you hate it. Personally, I can see its merits. I don't really fully like it, in all honesty. But I can see the advantages. You know, for us as a civilization. Not to sound, you know, like communist, like, the good of the many. But I could see how it would be better overall to reduce pollution and whatnot and reduce accidents. But, yeah, so let me know what you guys think. That was pretty much all I had to talk about today. You know, I just wanted to do that thought experiment. So, anyway, you guys have a good day. See ya. Until next time, adios.